Imagine dropping your child off at school, giving them a kiss on their forehead, whispering that you love them, and walking away thinking you will see them again in a few hours. Now imagine that the very next moment, before the sound of your footsteps even fades, someone you know raises a gun and fires it into your face. Witnesses say the screams echoed down the street, and children inside the school heard the chaos without knowing that a mother was dying outside their door. What if I told you the woman who pulled the trigger is still free? What if I told you this all happened in front of the father of the child they both shared? This is the story of Romeca Meeks, a 31-year-old mother who loved her son so deeply, she wrote him a note for his lunchbox that morning, not knowing it would be the last thing she ever gave him. Before we go deeper, make sure you subscribe, because the truth behind this case is darker than you think, and you will not want to miss a single detail of what really happened. Welcome back to Dark Motives, the place where we uncover the cases that keep families awake at night and leave entire communities begging for answers. Today we are looking at a case that will shake you because the details do not make sense, the pain feels too close, and the truth seems buried under silence. Before we continue, take 1 second to subscribe, because every week we bring you stories that deserve to be heard, not forgotten. And if you are watching right now, tell me in the comments where you are watching from, because cases like this are reminders that heartbreak does not respect distance. It can touch any city, any family, any mother walking her child into school on what should have been a normal morning. In this case, that morning turned into a nightmare, and the people responsible walked away from the scene. Stay with me, because the next part will take you inside the final moments leading up to the shooting and the signs everyone missed before everything exploded. On the morning of September 8th, Romeca Meeks woke up with one purpose: to get her 6-year-old son ready for school and make him feel loved before he stepped into his first-grade classroom. She packed his lunch, placed a handwritten note inside, and took a picture of it for her social media page. It was the kind of note only a mother writes, simple words that meant everything, a reminder that she would always be there for him. No one knew that within minutes, those words would become her final message to him. As she walked him to school near Kermock Road and State Street, nothing seemed unusual. Parents were dropping off their kids, teachers were greeting students, and the morning felt like any other day in the South Loop. Romeca kissed her son goodbye. She told him to have a great day. He ran inside without knowing this would be the last time he ever heard her voice. Moments later, people outside the school noticed Romeca standing near a woman she knew. This was not a stranger. This was someone connected to her through the same man, the father of her child. Both women had history. Both women had tension, and both women were carrying the emotional weight of a long and bitter conflict. But no one expected what happened next. A witness later said the argument started with words, then became sharp, then became hostile, until suddenly it turned physical. The situation escalated so fast that by the time people realized what was happening, Romeca and the woman were struggling against each other. Within seconds, the father of Romeca's child appeared and grabbed Romeca, pulling her into a headlock. His presence did not calm the fight. It made it worse. People nearby could feel the shift, the fear, the sense that something terrible was about to happen. Romeca had just left her son inside the building, and now she was fighting for control of her own space outside of it. No one knew that a gun was about to enter the scene. No one knew that the woman, standing only a few feet away, was already preparing to reach for something deadly. As the argument grew louder, people nearby felt the tension twisting into something dangerous. What started as shouting had turned into a physical fight, and the moment Romeca was pulled into a headlock by the father of her child, everything changed. Witnesses later said it looked like she was trapped, like she was fighting against two different battles at once. She was trying to push him off, trying to breathe, trying to regain her balance, while the woman she had been arguing with started moving toward a parked car as if she had already made up her mind about what she would do next. The woman did not walk away. She did not call for help. She did not step back to defuse the moment. Instead, she opened the car door and reached inside. People watching said they felt their hearts drop because everyone knows what that kind of movement means. It means someone is preparing to end the argument, not with words, but with something that can silence a life in seconds. In those few seconds, Romeca was still locked in the struggle. She was unarmed. She was overwhelmed. She had just kissed her son goodbye. She had no idea someone behind her was gripping a gun and stepping toward her with a decision she could never take back. A mother fighting for breath, and another woman holding a weapon she knew could take a life. When the woman turned around, witnesses said her face looked cold, focused, as if nothing around her mattered except the anger burning inside her. She raised the gun without hesitation. People on the street started shouting for her to stop. One person tried to move forward, but there was no time. The shot came faster than anyone could react. A single blast, fired at point-blank range, straight into Romeca's face. The sound echoed through the street and into the school building. Staff members inside felt the impact without knowing what had just happened outside their doors. Children in classrooms looked up in confusion, unaware that a mother was collapsing just feet away from them. Romeca fell to the ground instantly. Witnesses said she did not even have a chance to protect herself. She did not get to stand. She did not get to speak. She did not get to run. She had been shot while completely defenseless, held in place by the man she had a child with, while another woman pulled the trigger. And in the seconds after the shot, everything went quiet except for the screaming. The moment the shot rang out, the entire street froze. People who were walking to work stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. Parents who had just dropped off their children turned back in panic. A few teachers stepped out of the school doors, confused and terrified, because the sound of a gunshot outside an elementary school is the kind of nightmare every educator prays they never hear. Romeca was lying on the pavement, bleeding, barely conscious and unable to move. Witnesses said the blood spread fast, and her eyes looked distant, like she was slipping away before help could even arrive. Someone shouted for an ambulance. Someone else screamed her name, trying to keep her awake. But her body was still, and everyone who knelt beside her could feel that something irreversible had just happened. The woman who pulled the trigger did not run. She stood there, gun in hand, claiming she had a license to carry. People around her were shouting, asking why she did it, asking how she could do something like that in front of a school filled with children. She gave no real answer. Her voice was calm, far too calm for what she had just done. The father of Romeca's child stood there too. People watched him, unsure of what he would do, unsure of how he could possibly process the fact that the mother of his child had been shot while he held her in place moments before the bullet was fired. Some witnesses said he looked shocked. Others said he looked frozen, as if he was trying to understand how things escalated so quickly. But no expression on his face could erase the truth. He was there when the gun was raised. He was there when the shot was fired. And he was there while the mother of his child lay dying at his feet. Police arrived fast. They secured the scene. They placed the shooter in custody. They questioned witnesses who were shaking so hard they could barely speak. Teachers were instructed to lock the school doors. Children were told to stay in their classrooms. And while all of that was happening, paramedics were fighting to keep Romeca alive. She was rushed to Stroger Hospital, but the damage was devastating. A single shot at that range is almost always fatal. Doctors did everything they could, but within hours the news spread through the city. Romeca Meeks, a 31-year-old mother who loved her son more than anything, was gone. The city mourned, but her family was left with something even worse. They had to prepare for the moment when they would sit down with her son, the little boy she had kissed goodbye that morning, and somehow explain that the woman who wrote him that sweet note for his lunchbox was never coming home again. When news of Romeca's death reached her family, the shock broke them. Her mother described the moment she got the call as a nightmare that would not end. One minute she was thinking about her grandson's upcoming 7th birthday, and the next she was rushing to the hospital, praying for a miracle that never came. By the time she arrived, the doctors had already delivered the news. Romeca was gone. A mother, a daughter, a sister, a friend, taken within minutes of dropping her child off at school. The family gathered around each other in disbelief. They kept replaying the final moments she shared with her son. That sweet, handwritten note she tucked into his lunchbox. Her smile as she walked him through the school doors. The little boy running inside without knowing his entire world was about to collapse. Her mother later said she still did not know how she would explain any of this to him. How do you tell a 6-year-old that his mother was murdered outside his school in broad daylight? How do you tell him the woman who shot her is walking free? As the hours passed, the bigger question rose to the surface. Why was the shooter released? Why was a woman who fired a gun into the face of an unarmed mother allowed to walk out of custody? The family reached out to the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, hoping for answers, hoping for reassurance, hoping for justice. But they received nothing. No updates, no clear explanation, only silence. Then came the official statement. After reviewing the evidence, there was not enough information to make a charging decision at that time. The office said they would continue working with investigators, but to the family it felt like their daughter's life had been reduced to a file sitting on a desk. A life ended in front of a school, recorded by witnesses, described in detail by terrified parents. And somehow there was still not enough to hold someone accountable. At the same time, people began learning about the protective orders the shooter filed against Romeca. Orders that stretched back to December of the previous year. Orders filed again just months before the shooting. To the family, it did not look like fear. It looked like preparation. It looked like someone creating a trail, a story, a pattern that could be used to justify something terrible when the day finally came. And now that day had arrived. Romeca was gone. Her son was left without a mother, and the woman who pulled the trigger had returned home, protected by silence and legal caution, while the family cried through nights that felt endless. The moment the city learned what happened to Romeca, the community rose up in heartbreak and anger. People gathered for a vigil in West Englewood, holding candles, releasing balloons, and speaking her name with trembling voices. Her family stood at the front, fighting tears, unable to understand how a mother could be taken away so suddenly and so brutally. Her mother spoke through her grief, telling everyone that someone must answer for what happened to her daughter, because Romeca deserved far more than the silence surrounding her case. Loved ones talked about the birthday that was only days away. A little boy was supposed to be celebrating turning 7. Instead, his family now had to decide how to tell him that his mother, the woman who packed his lunch that morning and wrote him a sweet note, was never coming home again. The pain in her mother's voice was unmistakable. It was the kind of pain that comes from a wound that will never heal. People in the community also began raising questions about the protective orders the shooter had filed against Romeca. These were not small details. They stretched back months. They appeared again in the summer. And to many who knew Romeca, it felt calculated. It felt intentional. It felt like someone had been building a story long before the shooting even happened, a story that could later be used to justify something unthinkable. As days passed, frustration toward the authorities grew. The state's attorney said there was not enough information to make a charging decision. To the family and to the community, that explanation felt like a betrayal. A mother was shot in the face outside an elementary school. Witnesses were present. Video existed. And yet the woman accused of pulling the trigger was allowed to leave custody. People began gathering signatures, demanding justice. Voices rose at community meetings. Mothers cried in front of cameras. Neighbors shook their heads in disbelief. This was not just grief anymore. It was outrage. It was confusion. It was a demand for someone to explain how a woman could take a life in public and walk away while a family prepared to bury their daughter. Romeca's death did not just break the people who loved her. It woke an entire community, leaving them asking one question that still has no answer. How does something this violent, this clear, and this devastating end with no charges and no accountability? In just a few days after the shooting, Romeca's son was supposed to celebrate his 7th birthday. What should have been a joyful occasion became a painful reminder of everything lost. Instead of planning a party, his grandmother now faced the impossible task of explaining to a little boy that his mother would not be there to blow out the candles, would not be there to hug him, would not be there to celebrate the milestone she had been so excited to share with him. The note she had written for him that morning, tucked into his lunchbox, became a symbol of both love and heartbreak. It was a message meant to start his day with warmth and encouragement, and yet it became the last trace of his mother's voice. Her family clung to it, reading her words over and over, trying to find comfort in the memory of her love, while the reality of her death made every sentence ache. Everywhere people looked, they saw reminders of the tragedy. The school where she had dropped her son off became a painful landmark. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers asked how something like this could happen in broad daylight in a city filled with witnesses and cameras. And while the questions multiplied, the answers remained frustratingly absent. Her family described the shooting as senseless, unprovoked, and devastatingly cruel. They said there was no reason for anyone to pull a gun on her. She was unarmed. She was defenseless. She was a mother who had just kissed her child goodbye. And yet that single moment had ended her life and shattered her family forever. The tragedy rippled far beyond her home. Friends and co-workers mourned the loss of a woman they knew to be kind, loving, and full of life. Parents everywhere felt the fear that this could happen to them, and the city watched as questions of justice, accountability, and protection lingered without resolution, leaving Romeca's story as both a warning and a heartbreak. After the shooting, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office reviewed the case. Their statement was simple: there was insufficient information to make a charging decision at that time. To anyone outside the system, it sounded like a shrug. A life ended, a mother gone. And yet the person accused of pulling the trigger walked free. Romeca's family called the state's attorney multiple times, desperate for updates, desperate to know why justice was not being served. Each call, each inquiry, brought silence or vague reassurances. They felt ignored, unheard, and trapped in a nightmare with no way out. The sense of betrayal was overwhelming. This was a mother shot in broad daylight in front of witnesses, and the people responsible were still at large in the eyes of the law. The protective orders filed by the shooter against Romeca added another layer of confusion and frustration. These orders stretched back months. Some even filed just a few weeks before the shooting. To the family, it felt like someone had been creating a story in preparation for the unthinkable. They believed the paperwork was not protection, but a weapon, a way to frame Romeca and justify something that should never have happened. Community members also expressed their anger. People demanded answers at city meetings, on social media, and in local news coverage. Mothers, fathers, friends, and neighbors all asked the same questions. How could a woman be shot outside a school in full view of witnesses and surveillance cameras? And yet the shooter faced no immediate consequences. Why did the system seem to fail at protecting a loving mother whose only crime was doing her job as a parent? Every unanswered question left the family in deeper pain. Every delay in justice felt like another betrayal, and while the legal limbo continued, Romeca's absence became more painful with each passing day. As her son grew older without her guidance, her love, and her presence in the world. For the family, every moment after the shooting has been unbearable. Romeca's mother still recalls the first time she saw her daughter's empty seat in the hospital, the space where life had once been vibrant and loving, now replaced by grief and silence. The little boy kept asking where his mother was, and every answer brought fresh tears. Each day became a struggle to explain something too horrific for a 6-year-old to understand. Friends and neighbors describe Romeca as a woman full of life, always ready to help, always putting her son first. To know that her life ended in such a brutal and public way made the loss impossible to process. People could not reconcile the warmth she showed every day with the violence that ended her life in an instant. Witnesses continue to replay the moments of the shooting in their minds. The street outside the school, the struggle, the gun drawn, the single shot fired, the sudden collapse of a mother who had just kissed her child goodbye. Many say it haunts them. Some cry when they recount it. Some still cannot believe it happened. The fear, the chaos, and the helplessness of that moment are etched into the memory of everyone who saw it. The shooter, who has not given any statement, remains free. The protective orders she filed against Romeca are still part of the public record. A reminder to the family that Romeca's death could have been anticipated and prevented. The authorities have promised to continue the investigation, but the delays and silence only deepen the pain. Justice feels slow, distant, and uncertain, while a family grieves for a mother they will never see again. The world continues around them, but for Romeca's loved ones, time has frozen in those moments outside the school, where a mother's life was taken in broad daylight, leaving a child without a parent, a family without a daughter, and a community with a haunting reminder of how fragile life can be. The story of Romeca Meeks is a chilling reminder of how quickly a life can be stolen. A mother who had kissed her child goodbye, who had packed a lunch with a note of love, who had stepped onto the street with nothing but care in her heart, was shot and killed in broad daylight. The person who pulled the trigger walked free, leaving a family shattered and a community in shock. Her son's 7th birthday approached without his mother. Her family struggled to explain why the woman who loved him most would not be there. The birthday cake, the presents, the laughter. All of it became a symbol of absence, of loss, and of a world that feels cruel and unfair. This case forces us to ask difficult questions. How does the justice system allow a mother to be killed in front of her child and witnesses and still leave the shooter free? How do protective orders become tools instead of shields? How does a family cope when their loved one's life ends in a moment of violence that could have been prevented? We want to hear from you. Comment where you are watching from and share your thoughts on this case. What would you do if someone you loved was taken in a way so public, so cruel, and so senseless? If you want to follow the story in other cases like this, make sure to subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Romeca's story is heartbreaking, shocking, and real. It is a reminder to hold your loved ones close, to never ignore warning signs, and to demand justice for those who cannot speak for themselves. Her life ended too soon, but by sharing her story, we ensure that she is not forgotten. Her son, her family, and her memory deserve our attention, our compassion, and our insistence that justice be done.